Hello and welcome to another character analysis. I'm your host Merlin, and today we shall be discussing one of the most popular shonen action heroes in anime, Yusuke Urameshi. Yu Yu Hakusho is one of the most highly regarded series of the 1990s. There are many reasons for this, mostly coming back to the more complex characters and interesting themes that push the boundaries compared to similar shows like Dragon Ball of the time. One of the most significant factors to truly make the series stand out is Yusuke himself. Yusuke is not only different when compared to standard shonen heroes of the time, but even in relation to series protagonists decades after his own series. Firstly, let's get into some backstory and examine from the get-go what makes Urameshi so different. In the very first episode, we are introduced to our main character. Yusuke is a punk and a delinquent who is often skipping school, starting fights, and shows little regard for the few people in his life who seem to care about him, such as his single mother and his girlfriend. Immediately, viewers would notice something far more different with this teenager than, say, Goku, Luffy, Naruto, or even on the surface at least, more complex characters such as Vash or Kenshin. Yusuke is not really presented as evil, but certainly not a particularly good person. However, when a young boy is playing in the street, a positive attribute does come through. Yusuke jumps into the street, pushing the boy out of the way at the cost of his own life. He quickly realizes that he is dead and his spirit form is floating invisibly, preserving the impact that he had. He goes to his own funeral and sees how his death has affected others. His mother, his girlfriend, teachers, and even his rival Kuwabara, who expressed great loss as well, surprisingly. These early moments examine how one life cannot be taken for granted, even though the individual may not appear to have very high moral fiber. What sets Yusuke apart and makes his story initially more interesting than many of his contemporaries is that he is flawed. In its most basic form, that truly summarizes it. Yusuke is not some personified version of perfection like many traditional heroes. His flaws are significant and very noticeable. However, one of the ongoing themes of Hakusho is the idea of redemption. Here Yusuke hasn't done much with his life up to this point, but his one truly selfless act allows him to re-examine his life and to be given a second chance. Most of the early episodes focus on Yusuke trying to help others until he receives his destiny as a spirit detective. We also see the beginnings of what is probably the most interesting relationship in the show, that being between Yusuke and Kuwabara. Now, though the two do start off as basically enemies, Yusuke was actually someone Kuwabara always looked up to. Throughout much of the series, though Kuwabara, much like Krillin or Usopp, may seem a bit more out of his depth, his desire to stand with his friends in the face of danger shows great moral character. Interestingly, by tolerating Kuwabara, Yusuke learns something about people that he simply did not realize. On the surface, Kuwabara may seem like a big dumb bully, but once the layers have been broken down, the viewer learns that Kuwabara has powerful ideas regarding honor, not wanting to jeopardize his friends' academic futures by agreeing to not give in to his inhibitions to fight people. He is even revealed to be the most compassionate of the main group of characters, both having a higher sensitivity to supernatural energies, basically that he has a higher perception and intuition, but also in his compassion and an emotional connection to others, whether it will be to Yusuke, his older sister, or his love Yukina. By learning these things about Kuwabara, we see a reflection of how many viewed Yusuke, but in the right circumstances, the best can be brought out in an individual. Yusuke's flaws and his struggle to overcome them, or rather the manner in which he embraces them, is also at the core of the themes of Hakusho. Toguro and Sensui are both twisted versions of Yusuke in a sense, and what he has the potential to become if he gave in to his darker nature. Toguro was a man who gave in to his own desire for power and fear of death, who would have been using the teachings of Genkai for evil purposes. These gifts were later bestowed upon Yusuke. Sensui was a spirit detective like Yusuke, who on the surface would have been the traditional hero with strong morals. However, the darkness of the world proved to be too much for his psyche. In a way, Yusuke is also a chance at redemption for his mentors Genkai and Koenma. Now, in truth, Yusuke doesn't really have much in terms of development that separates him from most shonen protagonists. In a way, it's his attitude and general personality which make him stand out. From a character perspective, he serves as a reactionary individual to force other characters to look at things from a more down-to-earth perspective. In truth, most of his development occurs within the first arc of the series. He learns the value of his life, helps others, and embraces a higher calling. He just keeps his snarkiness. The only real exception to this pattern is towards the end of the series when Yusuke, after everything he's gone through, is briefly plagued by doubt about the pointlessness of it all. After all, he's seen the darkness of both demon and human at this point, and with a full-on demon war on the way. However, he overcomes this and demonstrates one of the most bold choices regarding a shonen action hero. He finds a more peaceful solution. Instead of leading an all-out war, he chooses to embrace the demons as people, that maybe some of them deserve a second chance. Hiei and Kurama are the most obvious examples of this. He decides to hold the tournament to decide the fate of the demon world, Mortal Kombat style. Now, while many fans have expressed the desire for an all-out demon war as a great way to end the series, I would argue that this is the perfect ending. Was it as entertaining as a war potentially could have been? Of course, most likely not. My inner 14-year-old would have loved another epic arc, but the strongest aspects of the final chapter were character-based. This shows that Yusuke has learned a lot and has grown from his roots. He thought outside the box. Season 1 Yusuke would have gone in all guns, or in this case, spirit guns blazing, but Yusuke had grown up. In all, Yusuke is a great character who is deserving of the respect he gets, though perhaps not quite as much. Yusuke is certainly unique and was a fresh perspective when compared to most other shonen heroes, but there are certainly some that are better written. Within the confines of his own series, though, he works very well, and that is ultimately what is most important. He has a more tragic backstory than most, and his gruff attitude, but most importantly, his obvious human flaws. This allows him to be relatable, especially to younger viewers. After all, what teenager hasn't felt like Yusuke at least some of the time? Alright guys, those were my thoughts on Yusuke. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and please send in requests. Please support my collab channels, The Phantom Group and Film Fanatics. As always, stay magical. Alright, peace.